Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of The Lone Wolf Show. I'm The Lone Wolf. You are watching www.witchcrafttv.online, where we are fair representation of all pagan, witch, and magic paths. And I have a special guest in the back, the renowned Christian Day, who does Hexfest. He does WitchCon. He owns two successful witchy shops in New Orleans and Salem, Massachusetts. Welcome to the platform, Christian Day. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, how are you? I am just spamming out your live to my social pilot.
Please spam away.
It just went live, so I'm gonna send it to all the Facebooks because that's the easiest ones. It doesn't have a graphic. Let me see. Share now.
Very, very cool.
Is this feeding back? It shouldn't be feeding back.
You sound great on this end.
I know why.
So Christian Day had left. He's dealing with some audio issues, and I have a feeling he'll be right back. Looks like we have some viewers here. We have some people over here that are spamming, and I'm not so sure that spamming is ever the the direction or the way. But we do have Christian Day standing by, and he'll be right back here momentarily. Here he is.
I deleted something. You know what it is? I think that the StreamYard, I have to turn off the sound somehow.
Merry meet to Christine Brett. Merry meet from New York. Love New York. My family comes from upstate New York. Lots of good folks up in that way. Thanks for joining the stream. Looks like we have well over 10 live viewers. Glad to have you on. Christian, you still feeling that that feedback you were talking about? Are things better?
You know what it was? Is I needed to turn the sound off.
Okay, cool.
I needed to turn the sound off for the Chrome, and when I ended up closing it, I closed you out. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Great. Thank you so much, Shauna Davis, live from Canada. We love our Canadian witches and pagans and magic people types. Thanks for joining the show. So you just came out with the WitchCon 2026 presentators of who's going to be there. Is that list going to grow, or is that set in stone right now?
Well, we have some backups. I always have to reject somebody because we usually get 140 to 50 submissions when we have 120, and I actually approved 122, and I don't know what I'm going to do because that's without me, and then Brian and I got to add in, so I might have to add a classroom. But yeah, no, it's huge. And, so I always have to reject someone, but we rejected about 20, but we put them in a backup list, and if we get enough people that pull out, we might add them in, depending on how good the class is. Sometimes the classes aren't as good, but most of them are good. And so, we put them all in a backup regardless and, then try to get them in. We had, 857 people sign up, and with presenters and workers and what have you, coven people, we had over 1,000 people watching WitchCon. It's huge. I did want to make one funny comment.
Okay.
I saw this show described as two felons. That could be the name of the show, but they would have to get it right.
Right.
It has to be the felon and the misdemeanor.
Yep.
Because I'm only a misdemeanor. I haven't graduated.
Right.
And I just want to make a quickie comment too. One of the most annoying things about the pagan community to me is the way they all get together with these pitchforks and torches, and they're gonna banish the reprobate from the community until, of course, you actually go to prison. And then they'll show up doing their prison ministry and give you a plastic chalice and a little cardboard thingy because, they want to speak to your spirituality until, of course, you're no longer in there. And then they want to burn you at the stake. Never understood this. Shame on you, shame on you, shame, shame, shame. Some weird. Oh, I didn't know who this particular crazy was that was in the chat. And then I went back and looked, and it was just, you might want to ban that person because nobody else is able to talk because she's
Yeah, they've been blocked. It's like it's a troller. Like we had enough trolls and like Harry Potter stuff and like Lord of the Rings. Like we don't do trolls on Witchcraft TV. We do fair representation for all paths, and we're talking about the awesome like service that you do for the community. You bring a lot of witches, a lot of pagans, a lot of magic folks together every single year. You do it online. It's the biggest thing online has ever seen, and I haven't seen anybody to do that, to bring so many people together. A couple other leaders in the community do that. Patrick McCullum has a really good way of bringing people together in the community. Christian Day, you also have a great way of bringing people together.
I've never heard a bad word about Patrick McCullum because I've heard a million bad words about him. I have it's like, what does my best friend Lorelai say to me? Christian, you're a rotten bitch, but you're a rotten bitch. What did somebody say to you? I was mean. Well, I'm guilty as charged. I'm just not all these other things. But no, it's always been important to me to bring who we are as witches and magical people to the forefront. Mm-hmm. It's, people are like, you do this for the money. No, I don't do any of this for the money. In fact, Hexfest hasn't been profitable since COVID. It's the one thing I do that isn't. And but I still do it because I want to do it. And people that say people like me or Lori Cabot, we've all gotten that. You do this for the money. My best friend Sean Poirier, who passed away in 2007, mm-hmm. He I was just getting the feedback again. I don't know what's going on. Sean in 1992, when Jeffrey Fenholt Ministries came to Salem and did this big thing at the hell is it? Let me see if it's this. Give me a moment while I just stick this in my ear because something's going on.
Sure.
And I keep getting this. Maybe they're in the wrong ear. I think they're in the wrong ear. Yeah, they're in the wrong ear. Yeah, it's Alassa said in the chat. What money? Kind of true. We're always robbing Peter to pay Paul within our empire. Still getting this weird feedback. Let me turn everything else down. Okay. So if in 1992, they offered Sean Poirier $25,000, I believe it was, to be the first, witch that switched in Salem for his first lecture. He didn't get a tenth of the television that I've had since. Could you imagine what the born-again Christians would pay me if I decided to abandon witchcraft and be like, I'll be a celebration? I would make more fucking money than God. So, like, if this was just a cash grab for me and I had no ethics or morals, I would go join the church. And, my husband and I have to be a little bit on the down low. I might have to get a big-haired wife. But no, this is my calling. It's what I do. It's everything about who I am. It's witchcraft and magic. And I've always been as authentic as I could be. And that's not always to everyone's taste. But, when I was 18 years old and I wanted to be a lawyer, I said, if I ever decided I was going to be a professional witch, there are 3 things I won't do. I won't change my name. I won't come up with some crazy backstory of, my grandmother was, the Strager from the island of whatever. And I won't get initiated. Now, I violated that rule at 47 years old, but I had already been in the magical community for so many years, 30 years before I got initiated. So I certainly, and there are people going, you got initiated so you could have credibility. First of all, I'm more well-known than probably almost every initiate in the world. Mm-hmm. So I didn't need it for that. I did it because it was magical for me. I'm a priest of the Alexandrian tradition. I don't fly the flag because, I don't want I don't want that to define everything of who I am, because what I do is, I think, much bigger than just my coven practice. I kind of sit with Lori Cabot in that, I like to joke, my husband's kind of like Maxine Sanders. Their goal is very much about furthering the priesthood of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
It is their supreme focus.
I like that.
More like Lori Cabot. It's like, the world needs magic. Come on, everybody, let's cast a spell. And so everything that I do is interested in socializing our religion. I remember Lori Cabot said, a million years ago to me, the Christians get Handel's Messiah. And I said to her, yeah, and we get lesbian coffee house music. Like, where is our great art? Where is our great, and so by being out there as witches, by you running this show and being out there and letting people know that we exist, you are making it easier for witches everywhere. You are socializing our religion, and you are expanding our civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I said to you on the phone earlier, you've had people on the show I don't care for, but I would never presume to tell you who to have. But every one of those people, even the ones I don't like,
right,
are spending time socializing our religion, unless they're being ridiculous. But, I think that piece never leaves my head. I tell every person that works with us in the shops, I say, you are ambassadors of magic. And if you help someone that comes into the store cast a spell and do something powerful for themselves, they take that knowledge like ants taking food back to the nest. They go back to Kansas or Arkansas or some other place where they're in some small town that thinks that we worship the devil. And they say, oh, I met Jenny that works at this store called Hex, and she helped me with the candle. And, I got my new job, and these witches aren't eating babies and killing people. And that never leaves my head. When people say, I get two questions more than any other.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't my spells work? And how do you keep doing what you do in spite of the thousands of haters?
How do you keep going on with thousands of haters?
The answer to both is the same. You must know that this is what you are meant to do. Mm-hmm. I remember watching Joan Rivers' piece of work documentary, and she said how the reporter said, is Melissa going to be a comedian too? And Joan was like, you don't just say I'm going to be a comedian. It's a calling. You have to want to get on that stage and have people not laugh if you're not funny. You have to have that willingness to take a risk, because it's like being a nun. You don't have a choice. That's real witchcraft. You don't have a choice. When you know that you don't have a choice, when you know that magic is real, and that your power is real, and that you are what you are, you're a witch, nothing will dissuade you. Nothing. I always keep my door open, even to enemies. I always keep my door open. I mean, there's some I probably don't want to open the door for, but generally speaking, I don't really close the door, because there's a bigger picture. When I see our people fighting everywhere, whether they're attacking me or each other, God knows, it's always a pitchfork and a torch going around.
Yeah, there's always that.
It's sad, especially in Salem and New Orleans. It's always bothered me when those things make the social media, because even more so than, just your generic, when people go at each other online. What makes it worse in Salem and New Orleans is that we're vacation towns. People want to go there to have fun. And if they see this stuff, they won't go. And guess what we then lose? We lose the ability to show these people what we can be. Not the conflict, not the hate. I have just done everything in my power, if you follow me on Facebook at all, to ignore. You can only ignore so much. I had to file a police report today over something that happened. There's only so much you can ignore. But, I always have the voice of wisdom in my head, whether it's Maxine or Lori Cabot or my husband, always saying, none of this matters. It's all a distraction from the work. And when you look at people engaging in this, you realize, well, aren't they distracted? What is their work? What are they doing? And it's like they want to talk about, oh, I closed a store. I mean, I literally sold the condo that Hex was in for 3 times what I paid for it.
Right.
$175,000 more than it's worth. I went and did what is looking to now be probably, I thought it was 100, probably over $150,000 renovation in the old Omen space, made it bigger than Hex and Omen combined. And I now, the staff has to, I don't know, for anybody that's done retail or hasn't, most retail shops make you go in and say, what did we do on this equivalent day for sales last year? So if it's Saturday the 10th of this year, it'll be Saturday the 11th of last year, and they run the numbers, and they are asked to compare this year's numbers to double what Hex did, because they don't have the Omen numbers at the new Hex. And so we are killing every single day, beating double what Hex did. And in early March, when there was tons of chaos, we had a report done compared to Hex and Omen, and the one store was down 3.2% from the 2 stores. But you don't have the mortgage, the condo fees, the payroll, and everything else that went along with the old Hex. So we're actually making more money now with 1 store than we did with 2. And we knew that we would. Like it was, we weren't totally sure, but we had a pretty strong sense. And, I had Lori Cabot and other people going, oh, this is great, do this. And it worked out because we are able to focus on the stronger brand. I loved Omen. It was my idea. Sean Poirier came up with the name Hex. I came up with everything else, but so it's sort of like, okay, the one I created didn't quite, Omen was successful, but it didn't resonate with people the way Hex did because it wasn't as visceral, and I think I kind of set that tone when I opened Hex in 2008, sorry, in the middle of a recession, no. There weren't any stores in Salem that sold voodoo or darker magic or, it was very sanitized. And so I kind of set the trend because now there's a lot of stores like that in Salem. And so when I had to decide which store I was going to keep, naturally it's Hex. Ed said, I'll be nice and I'll answer him even though he's mean to me. How am I handling the tariffs? Ed said, we haven't been hit by them yet. Our jewelry company is going up, but they're in Thailand, so they're not getting it. We don't really get, what do we get from China? We get some azure green, and I think some of them might be from China, but we don't get a lot because so many stores carry our azure green. Most of our stuff is made for us. And like Dark Candles, who's one of the big sponsors of Convocation, Shannon Dow, she's amazing. Truly. Like she makes our candles, she makes our incense, she makes tons of our stuff. And it's all made in America by American people. And her wax comes from America because people were all like, oh, the tariffs. So we're not really hit with those tariffs very much. I imagine some things will be, but here's the other thing. Much as I loathe Donald Trump, he always goes into these things like, we're going to tariff, and all of a sudden he pulls back because it was all like a game. Like he's the biggest troll there ever was. So I'm not sure, Ed, I will say this, Ed can be mean to me, but he's the only, I'm going to say this compliment, I give flowers. He's the only person in this community that really gets my thing. And that, my money doesn't come from the pagan community and that, it doesn't come from the pagan communities. Yeah, I get them, but it's mostly number one market segment is what I call muggle-seeking magic. They are the largest. The practitioners are the smallest. The souvenir seekers, I call them, are the second biggest. But in a tourism town, and one person took my class and saw muggle-seeking magic and thought, well, I can do that better, but I think they got it confused with muggle-seeking magnets. But, Claire's, it's not a witchcraft shop thing. And, it is right. Festival of the Dead, I don't know if it brought hundreds of millions, but it certainly, Sean and I revitalized Halloween in Salem to a point where 20 years ago, 21 now, I had lunch with the former chief marketing head of the Peabody Essex Museum. And he said, we at the Peabody Essex Museum do not believe that the Witch City identity is economically viable for Salem going forward. And I was like, well, as long as it's viable for me, I'll be working it like a pimp. And a friendship was born and we became good friends. But it's only in the last 5 years that the Peabody Essex Museum has embraced all of this. They have a gift shop that says needful things under the main sign, from horror movie. They have a whole pop-up shop of seances and spiritualism. They have a permanent exhibit of the witch trials, which you would think they would have had all along because they have all the documents and the artifacts. And they said to me years ago when I suggested, why don't, you could tell this story better than any tourist attraction in town because you've got all these artifacts and documents. And he says, well, we believe that the Board of Trustees believes that we would lose in endowments what we would gain in ticket sales. Well, obviously they were wrong. Because now, and they've even done the modern witch. They had that woman photographer that did all the pictures of women witches around America for the New Yorker magazine. They did a whole exhibit of her photography. It was fantastic. So I just have to know. And I was up against them. They wanted to get rid of anything witchy. If I can handle, they have 100 million in the bank, that museum. They are 600 million liquid. And even they could not, I remember Jay called me when the marketing officer, when the Charlie Sheen thing, of course, nobody remembers that. But in 2011, Charlie Sheen said he was a warlock. And I was on hundreds of radio shows and everything else. Like, oh, he's not a warlock. I had 6 stories on TMZ. Nobody remembers it. But I remember getting a call from the guy at the PEM going, my team is in awe. I said, yeah, you've got all these millions of dollars and I just can wage a cheap publicity stunt and get the word out. And yes, it's whoring. I don't deny it, but it is all in the name of that one thing. Like I've been really kind of taking control of our tour company. Oh, sorry. The Spirits and Spells tour, which is a walking tour in New Orleans. And I keep telling the people, you must not skip, Muriel's at one of these stops that talks about food for the dead. I remember getting into a debate with a close high priestess friend of mine when we all went to Egypt. He said, oh, they didn't eat dinner with the dead. And I said, I read it in some weird book. And then all of a sudden, when I went to write the second edition of the Witch's Book of the Dead, which I have out, this book came out that half of the book was at the Festival of the Valley in Egypt, and absolutely the wealthier families that had crypts up in the Valley of the Kings, they had foyers that they would dine with the dead. And then we went to the Al-Shakafa Mosque, which was it has a triclinium banquet hall that they would eat with the bodies, before they would deposit them to the final place. So these magical lessons that we do with this tour, it's everything all falls into this same pattern of, and yes, I suppose one could make the argument that when I allow myself to get caught into the bullshit that I sometimes allow myself get caught into, that doesn't exactly socialize it, but that stuff is all very internal. You know what I mean? Like our community type of thing. and I do have this, I don't often talk about it. My husband thinks, why don't you tell people? Because I don't want to be the victim. Because of child trauma, I have my own shrink. And, she's a doctorate. And while my husband's trying to diagnose me with autism, and everybody's always trying to tell me I have something, the only thing I'm diagnosed with is intermittent rage disorder, which I did say to my husband, well, maybe I could talk about that now that I know it's called the Jekyll and Hyde disease, because that sounds cool. But basically, and I'm not saying this to play the victim, because generally speaking, I think everybody knows if you come too hard at me, you're going to sort of wish you didn't. But there is this sort of button there, and I think these people know it. Like, they know if they keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the button, I'll suddenly overreact and say something really stupid or ridiculous or something I shouldn't have said. I get it, which is why, I deleted my sock account. I don't want to see it anymore. And more than that, it's all become so toxic, like the whole social media. Like, so many of my friends now are getting rid of Facebook. I mean, some of them was because, the Trump and all that. But a lot of them are just like, it's just so toxic. Everything they're battling about politics. I deleted hundreds of Trumpies in 2016. I didn't delete any this time. And you know why? I'm tired of people not being willing to have a conversation. I'm tired of it. What, last 2025's WitchCon, like 24, 2 weeks before, I had this person pull out. And he said, I'm being bullied, so I don't want to present. I said, I need to just send a fucking, pardon my swear, I need to send a message that cancel culture needs to go away and be replaced with conversation culture. At first, I thought of bringing somebody from the Asatru, and I said, I just can't. That's a bridge too far. Even though, I got these people running around calling me racist. What amuses me about this, first of all, I do not, and I never use the N-word. I hate that word. Anybody who says I use it is a lie. But if I'm a racist, I'm the only racist on the planet that believes in DEI, affirmative action, because I was furious when the Supreme Court overruled that, and I believe in reparations for slavery. Not a check necessarily, but I've always said, if they came out and said, we're going to give a 4-year Harvard education to every descendant of slavery, I would say, go for it. So I guess that makes me a racist, or I'm a transphobe. I have more trans people working for me than I can shake a stick at. And I encourage, I don't always get the they, them. Sometimes I have to remember to gender, when you're not saying they, them, because I'm old, but we all do that, but the goal is you want to respect someone's humanity and who they choose to be in life. And so, that sort of segues into, well, who can I invite to WitchCon that, okay, people might not like, and she has views I don't like? The Budapest. Oh yeah, that really, but funny, nobody, I said, oh my God. Because I want to invite someone that causes 20 people to pull out. Not only did nobody pull out, the 2 trans women speaking didn't pull out. And one of them absolutely loves the Budapest. And the other one publicly defended, cis women's right to cis-only spaces. And look, I'm not going to get into that. I don't have a vagina. So I'm not going to talk about, who gets to be what. I saw an argument on this trans woman's wall where she said that, and she had these non-binary people attacking her, saying it was okay for Black people and trans people to have trans and Black-only spaces, but not cis women. And I'm like, I personally am with John Lennon. I still believe that women are the most persecuted class of them all. I do. Not in America, but globally. But so, yeah, I had Z Budapest and I had Ruth Barrett. Talk about controversy. And guess what? No one cared. Everybody got a grip. They got together. They had a conversation. They might, oh God, here we go with the Jezebel. Shame on you.
Never heard of these people.
Still watching. Yeah,
Who
but
are these people? Never
it's
even heard
really
of them.
not nice to do that when you know other people are trying to have. Oh, okay, you blocked her. You know, when other people are trying to have a conversation. I mean, God knows Ed and I don't always see eye to eye, and he's able to come in and have a conversation. This is
Real
what
recognize real.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, the bottom line is, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, yeah, there's some years I might do better than others. And, you know, people think, you know, that, I mean, how many times have they written me off? More than they have share. And, you know, who knows? I'm always going to have struggles. It's just the way it is. But I'm not ever going away. Even if I lost all these stores, which sometimes are less, you know, all of this revenue comes in. I don't know that it's hundreds of millions, certainly not to me. But we spend so much on the business. I'm always like, Brian, where the fuck did all this money go? Like, where did the money go? And we put so much back into it. But just if I were to lose all of this, I have a psychic hotline that I do absolutely zero work on. Every couple of months, Kaylin will approve a few people. It takes all of 15 minutes to do that.
I had no idea about that. I didn't know you had a second.
Why do I not hear you?
You should. You should hear me fine.
I'm not hearing you. Hold on.
Okay.
Say something.
Yeah, I had no idea that you had a psychic hotline.
Oh, I couldn't hear you. Now I can hear you. So anyways, no wonder I've been rambling. I do anyway. But here's the thing. That psychic hotline would put me into upper middle class by itself. That, like, and that's without me doing readings that God knows what they're willing to pay me. And I might be starting that up again soon anyway, because I know with this show that we're going to be talking about in a minute or two, you know, I'm going to have a lot of people wanting them. And it's like, you know, it's sort of like when they bullied Tina Turner into going on tour again. Eventually I might need to. But the thing is, I'm never going away. I'm never going away. So when I find someone that I can't get to go away, you have three options. Destroy them. But that's not really as easy as it sounds. Because if I have found in the magical community, the only people that have truly been destroyed are the ones that allowed it. Like, they fed into it and they bought into it and they ran screaming. And they, you know, they allowed themselves to be canceled. That's not always true. But notice when Kathy Griffin, she fought her way back. You know, it can happen. So destroy them really doesn't work. Ignore them, which is the Laurie Cabot method. She's like the Queen of England, never complain, never explain, never had anything. She would never. And here's the thing.
Bless her heart.
Love her. She is the queen of them all. And it always will. I don't think any of us are ever going to be on her level. I think she has created a level that no one in the magical community will reach. And it's just, there it is. Or join them. My best friend was a mob wife, and her husband was going to burn my house down. And he had 200 foot soldiers ready to do it. But he says to her, why don't you join forces with them? So we did. He died. He passed away. But I don't close a door in any face, because I know that there is always an opportunity to take all of this to a level where the world can experience magic and know that it is real. Magic, yeah, Fiona Horn is barely human. My God. Yeah, no, I love Fiona. Fiona is one of my favorite. Like, it's clearly her, Maxine, and Laurie Cabot, and my husband. Those are my four faves, you know, for each different reason. Fiona represents what my father always called the most powerful magic in the world, the magic of do. D-O. That's it, right there. And so, you know, when I did the book, you know, she wrote a book for Warlock Press called Living the Elements, and it's got all the different scenes in the pentagram, you know, with her in it. And it's like, there she is scuba diving, you know, there she is, this, that, and the other. So, I got my favorites, and but this is the thing. You don't have to like everybody, but I don't close the door. If they want to close the door in my face, that's on them. That's on other people. One thing that, with this person that sort of went off on you today, one of the things that, another thing that bothers me about this community is they're going to tell you, and this is what they do. They do it to my friend Tracy, who's a 3rd-degree high priestess, a fabulous priestess, and they'll tell you, oh, don't you platform that person. They would never say that to Byron Ballard. They would never say that to Silver Ravenwolf or Dorothy Moore, more than any of these people. So when they say it to you, it's sort of like, well, obviously they don't think of you well. And that bothers me, because when you came out of nowhere, I had a couple of people, oh, be careful, he's a felon. I take everybody for who the fuck they are to me and what I see in their humanity. And I give everybody second chances, third chances, too many chances. But I won't do that to people. I've had it done to me too many times. So I'm not going to look at you, Harold, and be like, well, he hasn't written, 20 books for Llewellyn that will give anybody a contract. And he hasn't done this. So he wasn't on TV. I don't categorize people that way. I never have. First of all, I have to look down on everyone. Because I've done more than most of them, other than Lori. But I don't look at people that way. I refuse to look at people that way. And I won't judge people, even when they've done wrong. It depends on what they did, how they did it, what the context was, and what they've done to redeem themselves. There's a reason I don't believe in the death penalty. Not just because you're taking away chance for redemption, but because it was Increase Mather that said during his letter, Cases in Conscience, that ended the witch trials. And that was when Harvard was basically a religious school, and his son Cotton Mather had fueled the thing, but once the governor's wife got accused, suddenly it was this, okay, we've gone too far. And he said it were better that 10 witches go free than one innocent person be hanged. That, well over 35 years ago now, influenced my position against the death penalty, but also I'm against it for the same reason I'm against this cancel bullshit. Where's redemption culture? Where is conversation culture? I'm not saying I haven't said mean things. Some of them are actually true. Never said the N-word, but, there's these other things that people say I said, and, but they leave out what they said, and they leave out what they do. I've got people calling you a felon right now that's sidling up to somebody with $80,000 in collective bail, with 3 female victims, 2 of them victims of violence, and that's the person that they're platforming. And they're going to bitch about the felon and the misdemeanor? You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck. The bottom line is, I'm here. I'm not going away. Deal with it. You can either hate me, you can live in your rage. You can, like that one lady for 12 years has been ranting about me for 12 solid years. You can just live in that shadow.
I feel like transformational magic is probably the most potent magic known to me. One of the best ones.
And Ed, I did like that you said, what did he say? I think Harold is at a historical nexus. I would agree.
I don't even know what a nexus is. What's a nexus?
That sort of center point where everything sort of comes around. Like a spiral of things attracting to that center point. It's like the center of all these changes and transformations. And absolutely. I mean, I still find it amusing that, they'll come visit you in jail and give you a plastic cup, but, the moment you're out, they're going to want to burn you at the stake. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense to me. If you believe in prison ministry, why in hell would you believe in cancel culture? I really don't understand it. Look, I'm not sorry. Look, Z Buddha, I probably said the most misogynistic thing anyone has ever said to the mother of feminist spirituality, who gave Gloria Steinem a god. And literally, I had to do a little groveling, and we had our day. And there were things I honestly strongly disagreed with her on in terms of my own story and how we interacted many years ago. But she's still fucking Z Budapest. She gave Gloria Steinem a god.
Living pioneer.
Right. Do I agree with all her positions on trans or this or that? No. But do I think she has a voice and a place? Yes. And guess what? Maybe when we all come into the same room, even though, instead of being like, oh, I hate that person, have a fucking conversation. You might get somewhere. You might not. I don't know. But I sang with her. Well, she got lost this last WitchCon because she had to go to the grocery store to get a charger. And I don't know, but she's coming back next year, definitely. And look, I've had a worse feud with Z Budapest than I had with 99% of my haters, and she's presenting at my event. And let me tell you, it's not because she needs it. That woman has a gigantic following. Like, I went over there and I'm looking at her, I'm like, she's got so many people like singing her praises at 84 years old. Like, she doesn't need me. But I did want to talk about the show that's coming. And this is the other thing.
Discovery Channel, isn't it?
Let me borrow Ed's word, nexus here. My husband points out that it's always when we're going on a vacation, or we just, we're doing this and we're going here and we're doing that. And it's always when something big happens in our lives that these crazies just come out and just, they figure if they post enough things and they share it, it's like, please, I made this comment I truly regretted and apologized for in 2014, and it got shared 26,000 times on Tumblr. This week I'm saying, oh, this nasty thing about me got shared 39 times. I'm like, bitch, top 26,000 and I'm still here, and, we'll talk. It's funny that you're sort of having this feud with Ed's co-author, because I'm actually interested in, because years ago he and I had coffee and I said, you've got this list of the biological, it was the biological, chemical, and nuclear bullet items of how pagans, take themselves out of the game, or, make false accusations, and how it scorches the earth and makes everything toxic so no one can thrive and all, and I'm reading all that, and it was pretty true. I've seen it happen to so many people. He was right. I said, but at the time I said, I've been accused of everything, falsely, mind you, everything on this list except two things. And by the way, Ed, I've now gotten the two things. I had somebody publicly accuse me of raping them, a woman no less. Just like, I am a golden gay. I'm a platinum gay. But didn't stop her from saying it. So now I've gotten every bullet. And he actually said at the time, I might have to rewrite it in light of you. So it is interesting that, he's got the new edition out, because it's just, but here's the thing. I would answer to that book and anything else. The only showing up is half the battle. Just because they say all those things doesn't mean you have to be those things. You don't have to answer to those things. You don't have to answer to those people. There's 6 billion fucking people in this world. If fucking 10,000 of them don't like you. I mean, poor Beyonce's got this weird, I don't know if anybody's seen the Jaguar Wright video. It's crazy. I think she's like a QAnon anti-vaxxer black chick that goes on about Jay-Z and Beyonce are, Satanists and evil and blah, blah, blah. And, Piers Morgan finally put her on and realized how nuts she was and publicly apologized to Jay-Z and Beyonce. But what are you going to do? They're public figures. They can't make her stop any more than I can make these people stop. But what you can do is you go and you do something else. And this stuff does tend to happen. This stuff does tend to happen whenever we've got something big going on. And you're not going to get much bigger than next week. What is it? What day is the 23rd? Do we know? Salasa says you give such sage advice. Someday I'll actually take my own advice. Uh, I don't always live by it. Wednesday, the 23rd, at 10 p.m. on the Discovery Channel. Oh, by the way, just for the chat, that was, I think, my favorite accusation of all time was when this crazy person said I was a womanizer. You know, like Britney, womanizer. Anyway, so did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of some of these trolls here. That
Oh,
there's nothing nice to say. You know, that's that thing that we learned in kindergarten.
Don't block Jen. No, they're joking. Jim and Jen are joking about me being a womanizer. They're laughing. Okay. They're fine. That other person was probably weird, but yeah. I think it's funny that none of these people noticed the last time I was on your channel. Like, I've already been on it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, nobody,
thousands and thousands of views. Great show.
Yeah, but nobody seemed to care, and here's why: because I wasn't going on the most popular paranormal show in the world as I am next Wednesday night. This would be Ghost Adventures. Now,
congratulations on that. That's a great feat. I love the trajectory of you in terrestrial television. Just love it.
Well, one of the you don't know Nexus, but you know terrestrial. See, the that's a word you don't hear a lot. But like I was saying earlier, most people forgot about that Charlie Sheen debacle. But they all remember Ghost Adventures. Most of my fan base is from that show, and all the times they've re-aired it. And it was in 2011. And it really, I mean, it didn't show me in a bad light, but it didn't really say what really happened. You know, if you watched the Aftershocks interview show they did for a few years, one of the first ones had me on talking about what had happened in 2011. And basically, my friend Kelly Spangler, who's a medium, you know, and I went, you know, to the house. It goes, you know, the witch house, which, by the way, is not haunted. We basically chose it because they wanted to go to this Lyceum restaurant that's no longer around. And I said, I don't want to go there. The owner's a drunk. We used to have events there, and he was very rude to us. Let's go to the witch house. And so Jeff Belanger says, well, what's haunted about the witch house? I said, nothing, but I'll do a necromantic ritual, and we'll make it haunted. So then, you know, I get a call from the lady that runs the Park and Recreation Commission, and she says, Christian, the Park and Recreation Commission is really concerned about you doing this necromantic ritual in the witch house. I said, well, tell them I'll do a witch's blessing instead. She said, well, what's the difference? I said, absolutely nothing. I'm just changing the name. So Kelly and I get there. The guys are already locked in the house, and they realized that we realized that they were still going to do the Lyceum for the second half of the show. And I'm like, oh, it's going to suck. So, because Bridget Bishop always shows up at the Lyceum. Like, I've done shows there. There's always paranormal activity. I was devastated. So I grabbed Kelly's hand. I said, let's do some magic. I said, Bridget Bishop, if you've ever enjoyed my working with you, give them no audience, give them no show, do nothing, you know, do nothing, right? So then we go into the house. We find out they hadn't gotten anything in the house until we came in. And when we walked in, their machines went off, which is why having witches on a paranormal team is a good idea in one sense, you know, because we'll zhuzh it up. But it's also a bad idea because if you're trying to get scientific evidence, you know, we'll bring spirits wherever we go. So, you know, they got all this information. We did the ritual. It really set everything off. And when they used the ghost box, it called out my name, called out the name of Robert the Skull. And when they asked who the spirit was, it said Bridget Bishop. And that's why they showed me giggling on the show. Now, I explained all what I'm telling you now on the Aftershocks 2 years later. And I said, well, Bridget Bishop, that would be the last place she would go. The witch house, it was owned by one of the judges. They did examinations there. That wasn't a place where ghosts would be hanging out.
Make sure you tell our viewers who Bridget Bishop was.
Bridget
Some
Bishop
of our viewers may not know.
She was one of the people accused of witchcraft in the witch trials, and her apple orchard became the Lyceum restaurant many years later. It also is, it's now Turner's Seafood, which is great.
Bless her.
But anyway, yeah, so we proved magic on national television because not only did we conjure her out of the Lyceum, where they got nothing later, you know, when they finally showed the Lyceum, and Zach Bagan said to me on the phone, we didn't get anything, you know, at the Lyceum. And so we not only conjured her out of the witch house, Kelly and I, but she showed up. I mean, sorry, out of the Lyceum. We conjured her out of that. She shows up at the witch house. I mean, that's magic right there. It wasn't as obvious. This next episode, so Patty Negri, who's fabulous, she's a Hollywood witch, and you know, she's just really cool person. She's presented at Hexfest, incredible psychic medium, and WitchCon. You know, we were called out to conjure the spirit of Houdini at the Winchester Mystery House, which, okay, there's a little bit of a cheese, you know, but again, it's like the socialization of our religion. I'm going to want to do this because it's, you know, it puts us out there and it shows witches as being witches. And so I get out there. Patty and I went for Chinese food with this place that brings the woks out with fire on it. It was great. And we just totally hit it off. And we were deciding, you know, should we do our things separate or together? And I was like, oh, what do you think of together? I feel like, you know, we've worked together in that she's presented at my events, but we'd never like worked together. This could be fun. She's just a fun person. You know, I said, oh, we're going to have a blast together doing this. So we decided to work together, and we get in, you know, to do this seance. And of course, I noticed they don't allow candles in the Winchester Mystery House. So they had those really chintzy tea lights, not the ones from, what is it, Luminara, that go wiggly, 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 and you can't tell they're not real, but like the really chintzy ones from CVS. And I'm looking at Zach going, yeah, we need to get rid of those. But so we sat in this dining room for this seance, and they had the great grandnephew of Harry Houdini there. And, you know, they wanted to conjure Houdini. And I said, well, they started pulling out these floor tiles. And I was like, these are floor tiles Houdini walked on in Los Angeles. I said, but we're in San Jose. Why are we doing this? I said, you have the River of Blood here. They had George, the great grandnephew, as, you know, a connection, but they weren't using the connection. I said, no, this is the dude. You know, so I put my hand on his shoulder, and I'm like, I conjure Houdini. I mean, I realize it's cheesy. I don't want to really conjure Houdini, but you know, that's what they want you to do. And if it helps me to show witchcraft is real, I'm going to do it. So, you know, there's my hand. I'm like, you know, like conjure through the genetic memory and the River of Blood. And I tend to wing it. I don't have preconceived, you know, pre-made spells. I just kind of say what, you know, comes to mind. And it conjured him through that. And Patty read these poems that she had written to zhuzh up the energy and bring Houdini in. And I got to tell you, she's the real deal, because I don't want to step on toes. You know what I mean? I'm very much a team player. Those people don't know that, but I very much am. And so when I go into somebody's turf, you know, I want to kind of respect it. She's the psychic medium. So I'm not going to go in there with a million psychic impressions, because I'd rather just do the conjuring, because if I conjure it right, I'm going to get all the validation I need. I don't need people, oh, you were so psychic. But every time she said, do you feel the temperature change or something other phenomenon? I had felt it. And so I noticed did Zach, because he's very psychic. I felt that the first time I met him and said, very psychic. So she's the real deal, because she was saying things like, oh, I'm feeling this too. So she's got to be real. And so at one point, they've got that Ovulus box. And apparently what that does is it takes, I don't know, EMF or radio waves or something. I'm sure somebody in the chat knows better than I do, but they look at this and they're like, oh, turn it into words like a speak and spell. So it comes out on the screen, you know what I mean? And you'll see the words coming, I guess they have it programmed so the spirits can trigger it. And I'm a little skeptical of this, but I know that they're not faking it because this is all happening in real time. And what was funny is at one point I did give a psychic impression. I said, there's something really bad, negative here. I said, this place is filled with spirits. There's something really negative here, like non-human. And I don't feel like it's always been here. It feels like it's a newer thing and it's just sort of attached itself. And, Zach's looking at me like, who cares? We want to talk about Houdini. But the Ovulus box then starts spitting out devils, darkness, basement, all these creepy words. And, so I'm like, told you so. And then he asks the Ovulus box to give us validation that Houdini's there. And it comes out with what everybody thought at first. Like one of the team members said, oh, it's saying read poem. It wants Patty to read another poem. And I piped up and I said, that's not what it's saying. I said, you asked if a proof that Houdini was here. He said, however you can send it, whether it's the box or the trumpet or all these other doodads and gadgets he's got going on. And the Ovulus says, I said, it said red poem. That's your validation. The word read can also be pronounced read in the past tense. I said, so it's saying Patty read the poem. I mean, what more proof do you need? So then they decide they were originally going to just go up into the mansion by themselves with the team. And they then invited Patty and me and George because they thought, well, these guys are really bringing in the energy. And, so me without the flashlight with my whole witch's cape in the middle of the Winchester Mystery House at like midnight. And I wasn't one of the dudes with the flashlight. So I'm getting lost, trying not to bump my head. And for those that don't know, the Winchester Mystery House is this huge mansion with doorways and staircases to nowhere. The woman just kept building and building and building. And there's all sorts of theories, including spiritualism and ghosts and other things about why she did this. But either way, the house is fascinating, and I'm lost in the middle of it in the dark, and we got separated from the team, me, Patty, and George. So we ended up in this room called the Witch Hat Room. I think there was one other dude with us, but I don't remember if he was filming, honestly. So I don't know if they got that. But we did an impromptu ceremony in this turret room that's called the Witch Hat Room. And Patty started, I couldn't tell you the melody now, but she started a particular witch's chant, and I immediately knew the melody, and I don't know how. I mean, I am a singer, but I still have to take, a couple bars to get the melody down. I got to listen to it a couple times. I immediately knew it. It was really wild. And so we come back downstairs, and that was an adventure in itself in that house. And the team had beaten us by maybe 5 minutes. And they got all these Polaroids out on the table. And, for those that are too young, a Polaroid is like an instant picture, that pops out of the camera, and you can't fake that. And if you could, you'd have to at least take time to do it. You know what I mean? You couldn't do it, in the 5 minutes since they got downstairs. And there was, all of them were relatively normal, except, a little blurred head here and there. And then there's this one photo. And there's light beams bouncing all around the room. and they were coming out of my hand. Like I had my hands like this, and the light beam shooting out of my hand, kind of causing the whole room to go off. And the best part was George at the back of the table had literally transformed into a pillar of light, which sort of came back to me too, because I'm the one that said, let's conjure him through this guy. So he naturally became the biggest conduit of energy in the room, but it was all coming out of my hand. So, you know, who is it? I've always been slightly, well, not really, I'm not the jealous type, but there's been a little jealousy there that Lori Cabot had that picture in 1979 in the National Geographic where her whole coven was surrounded with blue light. And you can find that on YouTube. Look up Lori Cabot, National Geographic. It's just spectacular. And, you know, I've always wished I had some. You know? So I said to my husband a couple of weeks ago, I said, I might be just a first degree Alexandrian, but I have Sith Lord powers. You know, because basically I'm like the emperor sitting in this freaking room, you know, and they're showing it, you know, they're showing it. And like, okay, is it cool for me? Yeah. I mean, I was over Lori Cabot's house. I said, does it ever get old for you? Because she's 92. And she said, no. Like when you have these amazing things that happen magically, they never get old. They never get old. And they remind you that this is real. There's a reason we do this. In spite of all the hate and the mean and the negative things and the false accusations and whatever people want to say about you. I mean, some of the things they say are true. Most of them are not. And, you know, it's, you know, I'm a flawed person. What are you going to do? But I'm the person. You know, I'm the flawed person shooting the lightning beams out of my hands. Lori Cabot's a flawed person. She's also the most amazing witch, you know, one of them that ever lived. And it's why you do it. Because now the people that watch this, they're going to be like, I joked to Lori because I was like, you know, I saw you when you said in Power of the Witch in 1989, her first book, I said, you said, don't expect lightning to shoot out of your fingers just yet. And I was like, it only took 35 years, but at the same time, like that's how magic works. I did a spell 30 years ago to get the giant AGP Isis that Cabot's had on her altar all these years, and I've always wanted one. It took 30 years for that spell to work, and it came out of nowhere. So I'm like, oh, I have this Isis. I'm like, you know, that's magic. Sometimes it happens right away. Sometimes it takes a while, but it's real. And if there's one thing that I hope that show does, because let's face it, those shows are about letting people know there's life after death. That is the main thing of that kind of show. That, you know, we don't just die and that's it. So, you know, all these shows, and well, I've done a few that were not. Frankly, I think Ghost Adventures is the most real. I've had some really terrible things done on some of these other shows where they literally took words that Brian or I said and put them in different places to make it sound like we said something totally different. And that's not what these guys are like. They are the real deal. I will die on that Alamo. They are amazing people. And if anything people get from watching this next week, if magic is real for me, it's real for you. I didn't have psychic ability when I took Lori Cabot's class at 20 years old. I'd read some tarot cards. I was good at it. But I didn't have, like, I always joke I wasn't an indigo child. I was a Ritalin child. Well, only for 24 hours. It sent me bouncing off the walls. But I didn't have psychic ability as a kid. I was one of the, you know, they all say, I was born with a call, or, you know, I'm a 10th generation, blah, 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 blah. I didn't have any of that. But I took her class. I nailed those psychic diagnoses you got to do, the health cases. I nailed them. And I said, I remember after taking that class, well, if they can make me psychic, anybody can be. You know, if I can go on there and shoot lightning out of my hands, so can you. I didn't have this as a childhood. I didn't have any of it. I just knew magic was real and allowed it to be real. I didn't deny it. I didn't, because Sean used to pick on me, my best friend. He called me the atheist witch. He said, like that line from Practical Magic. He says, how do you expect your magic to work when you turn up your nose at it? And he was right. I often had those crises of faith through my 20s and 30s, even though I'd had these amazing psychic experiences. But if you go a certain amount of time without one, sometimes you begin to lose your faith in it. Oh, maybe it wasn't real. That happens to every witch I know. You'll go through that time where you go, oh, maybe it isn't real. But if you see that show, you're going to know magic is real. You're going to know it's real. And you're going to know it's real for you, not just me. And that, how empowering.
We're getting to the bottom of the hour here on the Lone Wolf Show. Mr. Day, do you have any closing words of wisdom to our viewers, to fellow witches who are walking the path?
Fuck the dumb stuff. There's the word. That's what my mother would have said. Crass, fuck the dumb stuff. That was something she used to say. But I want to thank you all for joining in, and thank you for having me. I thought it was a funny, I'm seeing all this. I'm like, they're picking on this poor guy. You know what? Let me do his show. We came up with this last minute. I was like, let's do a live. Let's remind them of what this is about. It's not about hate or pitchforks or torches or any of it. It's about finding your own magic, living your own magic. Sorry, I keep looking at the screens. You don't see my eyes. Living your own magic and letting it breathe out into the world. Is there anything more spectacular than that? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Great having you on. Thanks for coming by the Lone Wolf Show on www.witchcrafttv.online. We are a fair representation of all pagan witch and magic paths. Keep it right here, and make sure to check out our Witchcraft TV merchandise.
Witchcraft TV t-shirts are now available.
Wow.
Witchy Kids Network tees right here on our website. Order yours today and support the hottest online witchcraft television station on the planet.
Wow!
Your very own Witchcraft TV teddy bear to cuddle while watching your favorite Witchcraft TV show. Try our Witchcraft TV multivitamins for good health. Never miss your favorite Witchcraft TV show with our official wall clock. Drape yourself with Witchcraft TV pride with our jewelry. With our official coffee mug, you can sip in style and watch your favorite shows. These collectibles are available now, right here on our website under Witchcraft TV merchandise.